All right, guys, welcome back as we continue to study the book of Exodus. You know, the whole theme is the deliverer. You know, Jesus is the one who delivers the people out of Egypt. Yes, his chosen vessel is through Moses, but big picture, it's Jesus that's the one that is setting the captives free. And I love the image of how it happens in the Exodus and how it happens in Luke 4 when, you know, he's describing, he's in Nazareth, he's in the synagogue, and he stands up and he says his role is to actually, yes, set the captives free. It's an incredible picture. And so until we get to that point of Luke 4, how does Moses continue to deliver the people? How does he continue to point them to God? Well, just yesterday, it seems like last week, just yesterday we talked about the Mosaic covenant, this conditional covenant that the Israelites are being asked to do, and then when they do, the Lord honestly honors them and blesses them and pours out his love for them. And how it unfolds is, well, in Exodus 20, it's the 10 Commandments. Here's how I want you. These are the guardrails that I want you to follow. And so, do anybody think you guys can name all 10 right now off the top of your head?
Yep, I can.
You can, for real? Yeah. You have them written down, don't you?
I do, right here.
And so what happens is after he receives these 10 Commandments, then the Lord continues to give him additional laws. Like, remember, we said, do you guys remember how many laws that there actually are?
735.
Kevin, not even close. 613. Where'd you come up with that number? That was good. And so you have the 10, and then you have, now he's going to start getting into some more details about how he wants them to walk with him closely. Now, move forward as he continues to do that. In Exodus 21, verse 1, he says, these are the ordinances that must be set before them. So please remember this. The 10 Commandments, those are good, but he has a whole lot more as well. That's important to understand, and this is where he's going to get into it. Now, imagine this. Imagine if 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us, we get into an argument, okay? And it's talking about stealing. Let's just give you an example, okay? All of a sudden, Tom says, we have a bag of M&Ms back there. All of a sudden, the peanut M&Ms just disappear. Well, let's just say that argument of stealing, Tom will say, well, I didn't take it. Well, Kevin say, well, I didn't take it. And so it becomes a specific case. These, what we're going to read, are specific cases of people stealing M&Ms. Does that make sense? Or specific cases of, maybe Kevin hit Jeff. But like a specific case of, like, it doesn't fit under the category of the 10 Commandments, but there's more that need to be refined. Okay, so these are what we would consider specific lawsuits. Not really, but you get the point. Specific actions that are brought before Moses and the people. And he says, here are some of them. Now, I'm just going to tell you this. Some of these are really sad. Some of these are really weird. Some of these are extremely strange. And you're going to be like, how on earth does studying Exodus 21 and the ordinances help me? Rich, we talked about this a little bit. What would you say? How does going through this help us understand who Jesus is, the deliverer?
I think it's trying to govern the heart issue. If you look at the people, they have come out of 400 years of being enslaved in Egypt and a culture, and to try and change their mindset and their thinking of, hey, you were thinking this one way while you were slaves in Egypt, but now I need you to change your thought process as well as your heart condition.
For the next couple verses 2 through 6, we're going to talk about slavery. So in that context, you got to remember this. Okay, you got to remember, they're just wandering around, okay? And so the Lord's putting some structure as they're wandering around. And so they're creating a culture, they're creating a community. And so it says when you buy a Hebrew slave, he's to serve for 6 years, and then in the 7th, he's to leave as a free man without paying anything. When I read this, I think, Hebrew slave? That's weird. They just came out of slavery. All of a sudden, why do they have this mindset of slavery? You got to understand, in a strange, this is really... Okay, Lord, give me clarity on this. It's more of a servant mindset than it is slavery. Here's how you know, because after 6 years, they're set free. So I just think it's weird that they even talk like this, Hebrew slave language, when they just got set free. And so it just shows me that they can't even manage their money well because they're already in debt, and now they're kind of going back into their old lifestyle in some weird way. So in verse 3, if anybody arrives alone as a slave, he's to leave alone, 7th year. If he arrives with his wife is to leave with him. Well, praise the Lord. The husband and wife can leave after 7 years. Now in verse 4, this is where it gets interesting. If a master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, during that time of slavery, the wife and her children, this is where it stinks, belong to her master, and the man must leave alone. well, hey, this is nice to meet you, nice to marry you. Hey, I love my 3 kids, 7th year, I'm free to leave. Like, that's weird. And so he can, that's an option to leave. But then in verse 5, but if the slave declares, nope, I love my family. I love my master, I love my wife, I love my children, and I don't want to leave as a free man. That would be weird. If he doesn't want to leave, he actually has an option. So it says in verse 7 that he has to come before his master, who then brings him to the judges, and then they bring him to the door or to the doorpost. And his master then pierces his ear with an awl, and he will serve his master for life. He all of a sudden, this piercing his ear, it's a sign that he is now indebted to this man for the rest of his life. When you come before the judge, there's something I want to make sure everybody understands. The Nelsons would say he's coming before the judge to tell him, intentionally, I am willing to give up my life to serve this master so that I can continue to have my wife and kids. So it goes back to this human rights mentality of God is regarding the human rights. This is not an evil institution that we're talking about. Yes, slavery is wrong when they disregard human rights. That's not even a question. But in this case, in the Hebrews, God allows, he's putting a marker in there because he can be with his family and his kids. John MacArthur says that at this point he's remaining a servant, but not a slave. Okay, simple illustration. He's not a servant, not a slave, but he's remaining a servant. So you're like, I can tell you've never taught on this before. I haven't ever taught. Who teaches through ordinances? Right? Rich, what do you got?
Well, you have to put in context, like, why were the Israelites considered slaves in the first place, right? Joseph saved this great nation.
Yeah.
A Pharaoh came on the scene who had no idea what Joseph done. And the whole reason was this Pharaoh comes on the scene and says, man, these guys are so numerous, they're going to overtake us. So what's he do? He puts them in slavery. And he treats them harshly because he doesn't want them to leave, and he wants to exercise his authority over them because he considers them a threat. So we get this bad institution of slavery based on that picture, and they're coming out of this, and now God's saying, no, that's not how you treat these slaves. They were treated poorly in Egypt. This is how you treat them. They're help for you, not someone to beat and rule over as far as like with an authoritative type mentality.
This is going to sound really bad. Okay, let me just sound this out in today's context. Like, have you guys ever hired anybody to do some kind of work at your house?
Yeah. Yep.
Whatever it is. I mean, it could be patching drywall, it could be mowing a yard, it could be at times cleaning a house, it could be doing some roof work. I just want to get at, how do you treat those people as they're helping you? Like, that's the mentality that we're after. They are humans. They're not just some random person. They're humans who God has designed to help, and then you get the point there. And I think it's how you treat them and how they treat you. That's my mindset. I mean, I was a maintenance guy for 5 years. There are times that they just treat you like junk, and I get that. But then there are times where people make you feel like a gold mine. You fix their toilet, and they're like, you're the best thing ever. I don't know why I had to go to the toilet, but whatever, you know. All right, so here we go, verse 7. Let's keep going. All right, so now we're going to get into female slavery. Okay, that's the male slavery side, okay, male servant side. Now we're going to get into the slavery side for females. And the females don't have a whole lot of rights, strangely enough. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she's not to leave as the male slaves do. Okay, they don't have a whole lot of freedom. The father sells his daughter, she has no authority. It's kind of crazy. In this context, the father sells her as a servant, ready for this, for marriage. Okay, watch in verse 8. If she is displeasing to her master, who choose her for himself, then he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has acted treacherously toward her. So, first of all, as he sells her to the quote-unquote possible father-in-law, that father-in-law cannot sell her to foreigners, okay? And in verse 9, or if he chooses her for his son, there it is, he must deal with her according to the customary treatment of daughters. So now he has to treat her according to the customs. In verse 10, if the son takes an additional wife, he must not reduce the food, clothing, or marital rights of the first wife. So the daughter that's being sold, okay, yes, that they need to have the payment. And then at the same time, when you start bringing in 2, 3, 4 wives, first of all, that's super weird. But then also it just says, but you cannot treat your first wife differently than your second wife. I can't believe I'm even having this conversation. We'll get into this in verse 11 about who this makes you think of. And if he does not do these things, these three things, food, clothing, or marital rights, she may leave free of charge without any exchange of money. This is the only time she can leave. After 7 years, a male guy can leave. But this is the only time when she's not treated properly, then she's free to go. Genesis 30, verse 9. We're going to go back to the old school days of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and a whole lot of weird marriages going on. And then Genesis 39, when Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her slave Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. All of a sudden, Jacob is starting to sleep around with slaves. There it is, slaves. But here's the deal. He can't treat Zilpah, right? He has to treat her according to these things. He needs to treat her according to the way he would treat Leah. And that was a problem because Hagar felt shafted. Do you remember that whole story? Hagar felt shafted, and then it gets all, just stick to one wife. In verse 12, okay, we've gone from male slavery to female slavery to now verse 12. Let's talk a little death here. Whoever strikes a person so that he dies must be put to death. This is called capital punishment. If you kill somebody, you must be put to death. You guys remember? Let's go back to Noah. Genesis 9, verse 6. Genesis 9:6 talks about same thing. Genesis 9:6, whoever sheds man's blood, his blood will be shed by man. Why? For God made man in his own image. Dr. Tom Constable said, God regarded the sanctity of life greater than the sanctity of place. Why do I go there? Because in the ancient Near East, if somebody killed somebody in that time, they could actually, they could leave and go hide. Okay? We'll get into that, a little bit of the cities of refuge. We'll get into some of that. But if you intentionally look to kill somebody and you kill them, you will die. That's about as evil as a laugh as I got, man. Rich, maybe you should say that in your New York accent. You will die.
No, I'll pass.
Okay. All right. So we're going to get into some capital punishments, okay? Capital crimes. But now watch this. In verse 13, if he didn't intend any harm, okay, and yet God caused it to happen by his hand. In other words, if he still died, but he didn't mean to do it, it was an unintentional homicide, the penalty was banishment to an appointed place. This is what later on is known as cities of refuge, okay? In this context, if you killed somebody intentionally, you're dead, you will die. If you accidentally killed somebody, then you are put into what's called cities of refuge. I've always wondered what kind of conversations people had at the cities of refuge. So how many people did you accidentally kill? You know what I mean? It's kind of a weird dialogue. But in Numbers, you don't have to go there, Kevin, but in Numbers 35 and then in Deuteronomy 19, you have what's called cities of refuge for these people who it's their escape. I'm sorry I accidentally killed, but God allowed it to happen. But God has given me a place that I can go to. In verse 14, if a person schemes and willfully acts against his neighbor to murder him, you must take him from my altar to be put to death. Okay, so if there is premeditation with your neighbor, it means this premeditation, if you're boiling up, Scripture says, and you're acting with presumption, you killed your neighbor, you're going to be put to death. It's pretty straightforward. I love this statement by Davis. Life is the property of God. The possession of it is, this is cool, I've never heard this before. The possession of it is leased to human beings for a number of years. Killing is a violation of one of the essential laws of God and forfeits the right to possession of life. So we are leased, I love this image, we are leased possession of being a human being. But if you choose to take somebody else's life, God chooses to take your life. It wasn't yours to take in the first place because He gave it. Verse 15, whoever strikes, this one is bizarre. Whoever strikes his father or his mother must be put to death. Now, we're not talking about you kill your father or your mother. If you just hit your father or your mother, you will die. You guys have any thoughts on why that's so drastic?
Respect.
Goes to the Ten Commandments. You're not honoring your parents. You're breaking one of the 10 commandments in Exodus 20, verse 12. Don't honor your parents. So if you're not going to honor your parents, you're dead. I wonder how many children would still be alive today. Kind of serious. You're like, oh, you better get control of your kids. All right, the Code of Hammurabi. Okay, this code of Hammurabi was around the Babylonian time. Babylonians king Hammurabi, okay? Hammurabi, just try it, it's free. Is that when a person who struck his father, they would only have their hands cut off. But God went farther this time and said, no, you'll die. So sometimes the code of Hammurabi at that time was extreme, sometimes it's not. And in this case, God takes the extreme route. Verse 16, whoever kidnaps a person must be put to death. That's weird to me. Whether he sells them or the person is found in his possession, it doesn't matter. If you kidnap anybody, you'll be put to death. You know, when I delivered the newspapers in Goshen, Indiana, and then I delivered newspapers as an adult. Seems to be a theme of my life. When I was a kid, not when I was an adult, I was always afraid of the white vans. Do you know what I mean by that? I would ride my bike around Middlebury, and every time I'd see a white van with no windows, I'd be like, they're trying to kidnap me. And I pedaled fast. In this context, if you kidnap anybody, either whether you sell them or they're found in your possession, you will die. Why? Now, how does that fit into the picture? Where does that fit into the Ten Commandments? Kidnapping is what? Stealing. I never viewed it as that, but it's thou shalt not steal, Exodus 20, verse 15. Therefore, you will die. Okay, so if our kidnapping and messing with your parents, you're going to die. God just set the tones pretty straight. Verse 17, now, you ready for this one? Whoever curses his father or his mother must be put to death. So don't hit your parents and don't curse at your parents. Because again, you're dishonoring your parents in Exodus 20:12. You will die. I wonder if there is a long line for this. Like, I'd be like, dude, I'm not saying anything. Anyway, you get the point. So here you have male slavery issues, female slavery issues. Now you have capital punishment, capital crimes. Now we're going to get into bodily injuries. You're like, Rich, how does this fit into the delivery person again? Deliver again?
What deliverer?
Yeah, that's the problem. Here's the deal. All of this, can I just tell you? Nobody can keep up with this. Nobody. Nobody can keep up with not swearing sometimes. Nobody can keep up with not hitting somebody sometimes. Nobody can keep up with keeping your anger inside sometimes. And I'm telling you, in this time, if you did it, you would die. Praise the Lord. Jesus came in and took care of this issue for us. So when I see this, you know what this does? It points me to the Messiah saying there's something better coming. Verse 18, when men quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or a fist, and the injured man does not die, but is confined to bed. If he can later get up and walk around outside leaning on his staff, then the one who struck him will be exempt from punishment. Nevertheless, he will pay for his lost work time and provide for his complete recovery. You get in a fight in Israel in the wilderness. You know what happens? You're going to end up paying for workman's comp. You're going to pay for lost time and a whole lot of treatment of injury. I'd like to know what kind of treatment. Well, put some hyssop and oil on me today. That'll cost you 5 shekels. You know, like, I don't know. Anyway, all right, let's keep going. Here's another case. Verse 20, when a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies under his abuse, the owner must be punished. This makes me mad, actually. Do you know what his punishment is? He's protected from execution. His punishment is he loses his slave. That's how he's punished. Isn't that crazy? He didn't have to do anything. Verse 21, however, if the slave can stand up after a day or two, the owner should not be punished because he's his own property.
I thought we were talking about not being property, it was serving.
It's crazy, isn't it? There's a lot of weird language that just begins to happen. After 6 years, they're free. It's a great point. There's property. Are they serving? Well, he dies, so now all of a sudden, I'm just going to tell you right now, praise the Lord for the Messiah.
Well, I mean, who's writing this?
Moses.
Okay. Didn't Moses kill somebody?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what, did the statute of limitations run out on him, so he's no longer charged? He doesn't fall under this, or what?
His grandfathered in.
Grandfathered in. That's good.
He can kill more people. That's right, statute of limitations. Great point, guys. Here's the point. Don't be a slave and don't kill anybody. Verse 22, it's getting real now. When men get in a fight and hit a pregnant woman so that her children are born prematurely, but there is no injury, the one who hit her must be fined as the woman's husband demands from him, and he must pay according to judicial assessment. I sound like a lawyer. If there's an injury, then you must give life for life. Okay. There really is a lot here. If there's an injury, then you must give life for life. I want to just say this. Go back, Kevin, to verse 22. People use this as an abortion verse. Did you know that? It's crazy. When you really, really study this, here's what happens, okay? If you hit a woman and the baby dies, you're just paying a fine. That's it. That's all you're doing. You're paying a fine. When you kill the woman, you have to give your life. So then they say that the fetus is not legit here only when you're born. Okay? I really am not doing justice on this argument. I just want to point this out, that people that are pro-abortion use 22 and 23 as saying, well, all you have to do is give a fine when you hit a woman, or the baby dies. But when the woman's life is in hands and she dies, then your life is on the line. So all of a sudden, there's a hierarchy of life. So just wanted to point that out. And just want to tell you, domestic abuse is real. You should never hit a woman. You should never hit anybody else. But especially in this case, please don't. And I'm telling you, domestic abuse has gotten out of control. Sexually, domestically, all of that stuff. And I just want to tell you that a fetus is a person. I need to go there in this context, okay? Kevin, can you go to Psalm 51, verse 5? I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on this, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. Indeed, I was guilty when I was born. I was sinful when my mother conceived me. There's life when there's conception, okay? Can you go to Psalm 58, verse 3? Again, there's multiple verses. You really could pick any that you wanted to, but Psalm 58:3, the wicked go astray from the womb, liars err from birth, which says to me, at the very beginning there is life. From the womb, from birth. Just a couple other illustrations. Kevin, Psalm 139. We know this one, verse 13. Psalm 139, verse 13. For it was you who created my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Verse 14. I love this passage. Verse 14. I will praise you because I've been remarkably and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, and I know this very well. Verse 15. My bones were not hidden from you when I was made in secret, when I was informed in the depths of the earth. And then in verse 16. Your eyes saw me when I was formless. All my days were written in your book and planned before a single one of them began. The Lord knew from the very beginning, womb or outside of the womb, it's life. And I'm just going to tell you, back then, it really appears that life wasn't valued as a child in a womb. Because if so, just a fine. But God views this, you guys, as life. I'll say this, in verse 24, when it says an eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, I've always wondered, how does that work? Do you just bring them up to the judge and then they just poke your eye out? Or like you take somebody's tooth and they yank your tooth out, or like I accidentally took somebody's hand off and you say, okay, lop my hand off, or I've processed this. Most commentators would say it's a figurative mentality in saying you will pay for what they have lost. Most will always say constantly, you're paying for the value that they lost. Can I prove that? Absolutely not. But most of that in that context usually aligns with what other people are saying. 25, burn for burn, bruise for bruise, wound for wound. Verse 26, when a man strikes the eye of his male or female slave and destroys it, he must let the slave go free in compensation for his eye. So you take out a slave's eye, he all of a sudden gets to go free. And let me just tell you about the money and the money and then like the eye for, just to go back to that for a second, because it seems weird to say you're going to take a life for a life, but then when it's somebody's eye for eye, then you wouldn't take their eye for eye. There's a whole lot when it talks about this. The more and more you study in depth in that culture, it is a lot about paying out what they lost. That's really the heart behind this. In verse 27, you're going to see this flow over and over. If he knocks out the tooth, then guess what? That slave gets to go free. Verse 28, when an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox has got to be stoned and its meat may be eaten, but the ox's owner is innocent. Look, here's what's going to happen. The rest of this is that when an ox does something and the owner becomes innocent. I don't even feel like I'm supposed to go over the rest of this. So I'm just going to tell you this, okay? When an ox does something, you're going to pay up for it, and you know about it. Let me go to the bottom 33, okay? Sorry, I just jumped through 28 through 32 just because time. Verse 33, when a man uncovers a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit must give compensation. He must pay money to its owner, but the dead animal will become his. Again, here's the payment. Basically, the owner of the pit needs to pay up, and the dead animal becomes the owner of the pit. Verse 35, when a man's ox injures his neighbor's ox and it dies, they must sell the live ox and divide its proceeds. They must also divide the dead animal. What you have is a live ox must be sold, dead divided the money. The dead ox, it must be divided. Everything it's just being made equal. Now, we're going to get into some stuff tomorrow. Sometimes you have to pay 4 or 5 times the amount at times. Actually, that is some of the stuff that's in tomorrow. And then in verse 36, however, if it's known that the ox was in the habit of goring, yet its owner has not restrained it, he must compensate fully, ox for ox. The dead animal will become his. Again, bad habit, ox injures, gores others, you got to compensate fully. Every time it's a justice deal. This happens, you pay out for this. Sometimes it's your life, most of the time you're paying. That's really what this thing comes down to. And so when we're all said and done and we're looking at Exodus 21, there's a lot of ordinances that people just can't keep up with. Can I just tell you that? 613 ordinances. I bring that up because the pressure that the Jewish people must carry today is a radical weight. There's a heaviness that they don't maybe even know 40 of the ordinances. Maybe they don't even know 50. If you know 100 of them, you're doing good. If you know 200, you're doing incredible. But I challenge any Jewish person to stand here today right beside me and just without looking at paper, list off 613 ordinances. Because I am willing to bet you can't. And if you can, then there's another problem. You have to live them all out. The deal is I've been delivered from that weight. All of this is going to point to the coming Messiah. And the Messiah has already come. So now it's time to let these things go so that we can walk in full freedom. And when you get into Exodus 21, I'm telling you, it just looks like a lot of weight. In fact, Rich, I think you would agree when you go to Israel. I love that country. I've been called to that country. But there's a heaviness there. There's a weight there. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great place to visit. But every time when we've been on our trips, when you watch these guys walk around, I mean, it could be 114 degrees out, and these guys have big hats on and long coats, and they never smile. Their head is always down. They really look unhappy, and I think it's just because of the weight that they carry.
It's a way of trying to live up to a certain standard. We're going to keep going through these standards to prove the point of how important the Messiah is. That's Exodus 21, and guess what? We're going to do more of this tomorrow. Thanks for hanging in there, guys. Thanks for reading, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.